Jumpin In on Manx Radio.
With Howard and Chris Kane.
Hello.
Good evening.
And welcome. Saturday night, 9 o'clock, Jumpin In time, all the best in modern and contemporary jazz, of course. You know that by now, don't you? With myself, H.
And me, Chris. Yes, welcome along to this week's show. And as you can tell from the weather, it's all downhill now until Christmas. Speaking of which, there's just 170 days left to get shopping, so expect wrapping paper and tinsel in the shops any day soon. I'd buy early just to be on the safe side. You'd be crackers not to. But to be serious for a minute, the organisers of the London Jazz Festival announced last week that this year's event would be a combined live and digital event, and the acts would be confirmed in September. Given they'd usually have half the programme on sale by now, let's hope that the circumstances continue to improve and we can get at least one live event this year. So, what's been your countdown conundrum this week, H?
Yes, we live in hope, don't we? Fingers crossed we can get down there. We'll be having some letters from the underworlds. Yeah, don't get too worried about it. It's going back in time a bit with old Terje Rypdal. Haven't heard from him for a while. And Maria Schneider has a new one coming out. We haven't got it yet, but we'll be celebrating Data Lords with a look back with some of her live with the SWR Big Band.
And from me, well, up with the sun, down with the pygmies. Yes, anything for a simple life. And to start, get your marbles out, because even though it's the weekend has just got underway, here comes Weekdays. That was Weekdays, taken from Marble, the debut big band project from German bass player and composer Hendrika Enzian, plus, as she calls a large ensemble. Winner of the 2018 WDR Jazz Composers Prize, Hendrika has already a couple of highly acclaimed quartet albums under her belt, as well as several compositions already in the repertoire of both the WDR Big Band and the Metropole Orchestra. And if more Marble is anything to go by, I suspect there'll be plenty more to come.
Indeedy. Very nice. That's, yes, good stuff. And again, marvellous, we keep saying. So lovely to hear big bands seemingly having something of a renaissance. There seems to be no shortage of big bands playing at the moment in the modern end of the spectrum, despite all the obvious difficulties, leaving aside COVID, just the obvious difficulties of trying to get a big band together and make it pay and all the rest of it. Amazing just how much there is out there.
Social people, musicians, they don't like drinking by themselves.
Could be the answer, couldn't it? We'll have a bit more big band music later with Maria Schneider, by the way, so stay tuned. Going back in time a bit now, all the way back to 1987. It's one of the re-releases that ECM have been doing. For the last few years now, they've been bringing out some of their classics. I remember when this one first came out, I didn't know whether I liked it or not, really. Terje Rypdal, we've hardly heard from him at all of late, although I think he's still playing as far as I know, and the group he had called The Chasers. The album was Blue. Had rather good reviews when it came back out again as a re-release only last year, I think. Here's one of the more atmospheric numbers. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce the Norwegian. Terje Rypdal on electric guitar and keyboards, Bjorn Kjelmje on bass, acoustic bass and electric bass, and Odin Cleve on drums and percussion. Typical sort of Terje Rypdal soundscapes there. Very big with ECM and the ECM stable in the 70s and 80s, into the 90s a bit. I know he did some large orchestral works. Haven't seen anything from him in recent years.
Some of the early ones were quite rocky, to be honest.
They were very rocky,
good,
some of them,
good
yeah.
Ones. I always wanted Odyssey. I remember buying Odyssey, and I got the wrong one. I got Charles Earland, the organist and keyboard player. We all live in the jungle.
But then you must have had it on LP. I remember seeing them all, because the back of them, there's the 4 of them or 5 of them in the back of a transit van.
Yes, so I have it on LP, but I haven't got a copy on CD. So
it gets very good reviews.
Haven't heard it for a while.
Again, yeah, very nicely. But it's interesting. He is still playing. I mean, he must be past his first flush of youth now. But I had a friend when I used to live in Greenwich. Used to call him Turgid Ripoff. He quite liked him, but it was. And I did see him in London a couple of times, but I haven't seen him touring for a long time. So whether he's retired from active service or not, from the touring point of view, I don't know. We'll have a look
Maybe
and
an
find out.
ECM festival will come back with a vengeance.
That would be
when
ideal,
things
wouldn't
clear
it?
up. You're listening to Jumpin' In on Manx Radio with myself, Chris, and H, and of course. And just so that you can get the Big O's, the Pirogi, and the Pivo Kozikovi in ready, we should let you know that next week we'll be doing another one of our country focus shows, a long overdue Poland special. Now, it's hard enough to get noticed on the jazz scene as it is, but for a young British composer and pianist all set to launch your debut album and go on tour with it, to have to go straight into lockdown is a real challenge. Good job the music is this good. Here's Tom Taylor with First Light, the title track from his new release. First Light from the recently released album of the same name from Trinity graduate pianist Tom Taylor. And yes, I did check, and he doesn't appear to be related to the much-missed John Taylor, although he may have taken some inspiration from all of his canon of work. Tom is fortunately already quite a well-known face on the London scene in the company of guitarist Rob Luft, or in his free improvising trio Duck Rabbit with tenorman Joe Wright. On this debut, he's joined up by up-and-coming altoist Matthew Hurd. If there's a criticism to be levelled, it might be that there's perhaps little stylistic or tempo contrast between the tracks. That may have been lifted by breaking free of the framework and maybe a few more free-flying solos, but don't let that detract from what is a beautiful, albeit late-night album.
Now, a new name on the Blue Note roster, Nduzo Makatini, Modes of Communication, Letters from the Underworld. You might have heard him featured if you listened to J to Z. I think he was on the other week talking about his music and also picking some of his inspirations. Sounds a lovely chap. Can't say we've had the pleasure of meeting him or seeing him yet, but the music is interesting stuff. There's some vocals on it. It's very much influenced from sort of his African roots, talking about black issues and all manner of inspirations coming into it. Great stuff. I'm picking the tracks which are difficult to pronounce this evening, I tell you. Omyalas u Futomeo.
Bless you.
Thank you. Good ending. I like that. I like the drums. I like the sound. Is a new name on me. I must admit, is in now the Blue Note roster, and very good it is too. I've certainly been enjoying it. Induzo Macatini, and quite comprehensive notes, which opens out into something which is wider than the studio inside the actual CD. He says, note to listeners and fellow travellers, the core aim of this project is to create bridges and channels, spaces for dialogue to and from the realms of our ancestors. Through a metaphor of a letter, the project meditates on sonic texts as symbols within which particular meanings can be embodied and performed. In this way, improvisation is perceived as a type of liminal space responsible for transformation. The project hinges, as I suggested at the beginning, on African cosmology and cultural concepts such as crucial spaces that transform our... It's almost impossible to understand, isn't it? Our hermeneutic window towards creating alternative and unique musical articulations. There you go.
It's a shame it wasn't written in English, because that would have made it so much easier to cope with.
Shame I couldn't pronounce it. I'm not having a good day today, tell you.
Well, at the risk of becoming a travelogue, I have to admit that as a musician, you can take your inspiration from many, many different sources. But what may start you down a particular road of exploration can be a journey with many and various steps. As a child, saxophonist Seth Tratchie was brought up in the Blue Ridge Mountains and had the Appalachian wilderness as his playground. But as a musician beginning to explore, Seth describes how reading a book of his father's started the journey. Zygamon is a quartet I lead that plays instrumental adaptations of Cameroonian Baka pygmy music. When I was 9 years old, I borrowed a book from my dad by Louis Sarno entitled Song from the Forest, My Life Among the Pygmies. What I read captivated me and was the beginning of a lifelong fascination with pygmy music of the Ituri rainforest. Here's Jojo Yeli. get caught sleeping on the job. That was saxophonist Seth Trachy, or is it Trashy?
Oh,
or
now you're asking.
Trashay, I don't know. With Jojo or Yo-Yo Yelly, taken from his debut release, Zygmon, or Zygmon. On his website, Seth goes into some more detail about the Pygmy music, including a sample of somebody whistling that, if you listen to it, has an uncanny resemblance to the intro of Watermelon Man on Herbie Hancock's groundbreaking Headhunters album, which shows you nothing new is in the world. And from where does the name Zygmon originate? Again, Seth, I think, explains best. During my college years, I was exposed to the music of Miguel Zenon, who became an extremely important teacher and inspiration for me. When doing my first arrangement of Barbenzeli music, I found myself using compositional tools that Miguel had shown me, hence the name. Zenon plus Pygmy equals Zygmon. And indeed, his teacher and inspiration, Miguel Zenon, joins him on the album. And thanks very much to Rope and Oak Records for sending that into the show.
Good stuff indeed. And a number of artists out there who have albums and albums out and come across your radar for the first time. It always beggars belief, it has to be said. Maria Schneider, I think most people have heard of her, wonderful composer, very much a campaigner as well against, well, basically free streaming music and artists not getting their due credit and indeed payment for the wonderful content they provide and just being expected to give it away for nothing in essence. She campaigns widely on that, and her new project called Data Lords takes that pretty much as a theme. Not out yet. Trying to line up to see if we can chat to Maria about it. It'd be very interesting, but we've not heard back yet. In the meantime, to tide us over, let's go to Willeberg, Stuttgart with a live recording from the Jazz Matinee with her SWR big band, the Maria Schneider from 2000. And this is a track called Trouble Man.
Hello, I'm Julia Hutzmann. You're listening to Jumping In with Chris and H.
How about that?
Very nice, that wasn't it? Very nice. Roberto Chiamuggi. Another Italian like Enrico Pieranunzio, though perhaps not quite so prolific or so well known. Fine company there. Miroslav Vitus at the double bass. Gerald Cleaver. Of course, Tomasz Stanko at the drums on Cam Jazz from a year or two back. Very nice. And a track they call Come Sempre. And I do like the fact that Cam Jazz have taken as a sort of marketing thing. When you open your CD, you get 4 little stickers of miniatures of the CD cover to, dot about the place, stick on your fridge, on your car if it's very small, I suppose, give it to your kids. Don't know what you do with them, but they're nice though. Good idea.
Stick on your children's folders for school when they're not looking at them.
Perfect.
Who's that?
Right, well, time is running out as ever. Don't know how it happens.
Sadly, I don't know how it happens either, but that does indeed about wrap it up for another edition of Jumpin' In. Remember, don't miss our Poland special next week. We've just got time to leave you with a track from the recently released A Simple Life from studio owner and engineer Royan Sangenberg, who, from Norway, he's also a new name on me, but he's a remarkable multi-instrumentalist and composer, with some 20 releases under his own name on his own label, on which he composes, records and plays all the instruments. There are many things you might call him, but not necessarily all of them would be polite. But with his prodigious ability, fortunately he has a good ear for a tune too. Here's the title track, A Simple Life. See you next week.
Look after yourselves.